Good morning and welcome to Daily Red Devil. Before we get into today's video, please do me a small favour. Make sure to drop a like on this episode. Let's try and see 500 likes today. And be sure to subscribe to the channel, bottom right hand corner. The question I've got for you this morning is in relation to the Glazers. And we will be speaking about a story from a very reliable business outlet saying that they might be selling within the next 6 months. I mean, how many times have we heard that before? But the question I've got for you today is, when do you think the Glazers are going to sell Manchester United? Or do you think they ever will? Let me know your thoughts. Like, how do you feel about the current situation currently involving the ownership? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. But first of all, I didn't do a match reaction yesterday, so I apologise for that. But we're going to talk a little bit about the Everton game quickly, just for a couple of minutes. The first half was one of the worst I think I've seen in the last 10 years. I feel like I say that every week now, don't I? But every week it gets continually bad, doesn't it? The first half was awful, no shots on target. Patrick Dorgu was a bit of a bright light, but other than that, nothing to shout about. Second half, it was like a completely different team. Garnacho changed the game. Casemiro came off. That changed the game, as we can all expect. And Bruno dropped a little bit deeper, didn't he? And it kind of opened things up. I think in the end, we were maybe lucky to get a point, but we were much better in the second half. And I'm being very honest here. A point away at Goodison is not a bad result. Everton, before yesterday, had won 4 out of their last 5. And the other one, I think they'd drawn. So they were unbeaten in 5 games. Obviously, they drew with Liverpool at Goodison last weekend, who were top of the league. So, you know, in the grand scheme of things, a point away at Goodison is not a terrible result. But what happens now is the most important thing. You know, we have to now go and beat Ipswich on Wednesday, and we need to put in a convincing performance. We need to see how we played in that second half for a full 90 minutes. And if we did that, I think we could win 3-4-0 against Ipswich. That's what we need to be working towards. Because playing well in one half when you're already 2-0 down and the game's gone, it's not great, is it? So, yeah. But overall, not a lot to say, really. I think the first half, as I said, was awful. The second half was much better. Garnacho played well. Bruno played better in the second half. Who else did I think played well? I mean, not many people, to be honest. Maguire was awful. Onana was awful. Dallow's Dallow. Patrick Dorgu, I thought, was very good. So, fair play to him. Xerxes, I thought, was all right. Højlund, poor as usual. Trying to think who else even played. Manuel Ugarte was all right. It was just lots of 5 or 6s out of 10s, and then a couple of 2 or 3 out of 10s for Onana and Maguire. But yeah, let me know how you feel about yesterday's game. As I said, it's not really like the 1 point doesn't really make much difference for us. We went from 15th to 15th in the table. It's what we do in the next game, and we need to just win some games. We need to get some points on the scoreboard. We need to, as embarrassing as it sounds, we need to confirm our place in the Premier League next season. Because realistically, I think once you get to about 40 points, I would just be playing the youth, really. Because we need to then focus on the Europa League and focus on the FA Cup and try and salvage somewhat of this season. There's 12 games left to go. There is 36 points left to play for, right? If we do a little bit of quick maths here, so currently Ipswich are 18th. They're on 17 points. They've played 26 games. So they're averaging at the moment, Ipswich, 0.65 points per game, okay? There is 12 games remaining. So if they continue with the same form that they are now, which is probably going to happen, they would finish on 24 points. So realistically, we should be fine already, but I think, you want to get to about 35, 40 points. Again, it's so embarrassing that we're having this conversation, but this is the reality we find ourselves in. If we'd have lost to Everton yesterday and Ipswich had have won, the gap would have been closing. And if they'd have beat us on Wednesday at Old Trafford, then it would have actually been quite frightening. So I'm glad we got the point. Ipswich lost yesterday. West Ham obviously beat Arsenal, which was a freak result at the Emirates. I mean, who would have thought that? Crazy. That's what happens in football, and that's why people enjoy it. But anyway, let's move on from that. I don't want to spend too much time speaking about the game because, it was pretty... It just wasn't very good, was it? Dari says that Obi is better than Højlund. I think we have to be careful here, right? Let's not put too much pressure on Chido Obi. He is 17, I think. I agree. Elements of his game yesterday were very good. His hold-up play, specifically his hold-up play. And I do think at points he did change yesterday's game. I forgot to mention Chido Obi. Yeah, he was decent yesterday. He was really, really good for his... That was his second game in the Prem, to be fair, wasn't it? But yeah, to say, oh, he's better than Højlund, I just think that's putting too much pressure on him already. Let's give him the time he needs. I think he definitely should be in the first team 100%. And it looks like he's going to get that opportunity. So let's just get behind Chido Obi-Martin. He got 20 minutes against Everton. Let's hope he gets some minutes against Ipswich on Wednesday. And yeah, let's just be patient. Let's not overhype the kid. He's literally just turned 17 a couple of months ago. He's not even 18 yet. He's not even an adult, which is mental. When you think that until you're 18, I don't think you can vote, can you? You can't drink alcohol. If people, and I know in America it's 21 for alcohol and for things like that. So he still is literally just a kid. So let's give him the time he needs. Let's give him the patience. Let's not build him up too much. But he did do well. What else have we got here in the chat? Joseph says, why is Onana so scared to challenge for crosses and corners? I don't know. No idea. I don't understand Onana's goalkeeping at all. We were told that he was this, ball-playing goalkeeper. I don't see that either. I see someone whose ability to parry shots is awful. Like yesterday, one of the goals, he had a shot directly at him and he punched it straight in the air in front of the player and they scored. I mean, I was watching that game and even at a very, very basic level, you're told as a goalkeeper to parry the ball to the side, aren't you? But Onana just punched it up in the air. Bizarre. I definitely think, you could sort out the outfield problem issues. You could buy strikers, you could buy wingers, but as long as you've got Onana in goal, I think you're going to suffer. So he's definitely somebody I'd be looking to move on, if that was even possible. Did we buy him? We bought him 2 years ago, didn't we, Onana? Or was it last summer? I'm trying to remember. I think it was 2 years ago we bought Onana, wasn't it? Let's have a look. Yeah, so it'll be 2 years ago in the summer. We paid 50 million euros for him. How old's he now? He's 28 now. I mean, I reckon you'd be lucky to get 30, 40 million euros back for Onana. But in all fairness, obviously, remember that transfers are spread across 5 years. So in relation to Onana, by the time the summer comes, in relation to our financial fair play, we will have already paid off 20 million euros of that fee. So there'd only be 30 million euros left on the amortization, which means if we sold him for anything more than 30 million euros, in relation to PSR, it would mean we'd make a profit. So, I mean, that is still an option. I think we would be able to get 30 million euros for Onana, probably around that. Where to, I don't know, but I would definitely move him on 100%. I just don't think he's very good. I really don't. Transfer market values him at 35 million euros. So, yeah, I mean, maybe he goes back to Serie A. I could see a team in Serie A looking at him, maybe. Yeah, he's just not good enough. And I think you can spend as much money on outfield players as possible. You could buy strikers, you could buy wingers, you can buy all of these things, but it's not going to make any difference if you've got Onana in goal. Joe says the goalkeeper is the number one priority that no one is talking about. I would agree. I would completely agree. When you look at the goals that we're conceding, right, a lot of them are just individual mistakes. Pretty much every goal we concede has Onana's involvement in it one way or another. Not clearing the ball properly, parrying it to a player when he makes an average save. And then obviously the defenders also contribute as well. Like one of the goals, he punches the ball up in the air. Maguire tries to head it, he misses and the player scores. But still, Onana should not be punching the ball directly into the penalty box. He should be trying to push it out to the side or put it out for a corner or just chuck it over the bar or do something with it. Instead, he punches it literally to the attacker and they score. It's comical, isn't it? It's comical. Defending. I can see some people in the chat saying he's going to be hard to sell because of his wages. I mean, he's on 120 grand a week. I mean, that is quite a lot, isn't it? I probably agree. I can't really see anybody paying him 120 grand a week. I mean, again, this just shows how bad we are in relation to wages and recruitment, right? So we're Inter Milan, a team that got to the Champions League final. He was being paid £60,000 a week. At Manchester United, he's on £120,000 a week, so we doubled his wages. Not only did we give Inter Milan 50 million euros for him, we also gave him double what he was earning at his previous club. I mean, you can see how we're in the position we are financially when we're doing deals like this. Fair enough, give him a little bit more than what you get at Inter, because obviously Man United is a bigger club with more money in a more lucrative league. But to double his wages, that's mad. So yeah, that's one to keep an eye on. Obviously, Altay Bayindir is injured at the moment. Somebody says, do you think Amorim is going to get sacked next season? I don't know. It's impossible. If I knew that question, if I knew the answer to that question, I'd be going and doing the lottery tonight. If you want my opinion, which is just a guess, I think if he'd have lost badly to Everton yesterday and then lost to Ipswich, there'd be people calling for him to be sacked. At 2-0 yesterday against Everton, most of my Twitter feed was people saying to sack him, which is mad, I think. That people still think that the manager's the problem after 10 years of chopping and changing managers. You know, and people still seem to be blaming this on Erik ten Hag now, which is honestly baffling for me. Every manager that we've had in the last decade has failed. And for some reason, we still think that let's sack a manager after 3 or 4 months and suddenly everything will be great again. You know what will happen, right? This is literally what will happen. You sack Ruben Amorim, you bring in a new manager, they start doing badly, and then people will say, oh, we're doing badly because Ruben Amorim tried to change the tactics last season and now the players don't know what they're doing, and oh, he's made such a mess and it's going to take years to recover. Like, that narrative would start immediately. The thing is, right, for me, it completely depends on what your expectations are for Manchester United. If your expectations are still that Manchester United should be winning the league every season, then Ruben Amorim should be sacked this morning. Let me finish my sentence before and listen to this very, very carefully. So if you're one of those fans who, as I said, expects us to be winning the league every season, competing in the Champions League, going to the final stages and winning a cup, right? Then yeah, he should be sacked. He should have been sacked weeks ago. But if you're like most of the people who I think watch these videos, who are level-headed and understand the situation at Manchester United and realise that finishing 6th to 10th is probably realistic with this current set of players where we are, then no, he shouldn't be sacked. No way. Not a hope in hell. So it all depends on what your expectations are. So to say, do I think he'll be sacked? Should he be sacked? It all depends on where your mindset is. In my head, I didn't even want Erik ten Hag to be sacked. I didn't want Mourinho to be sacked. Like, I always will stick with the managers. I understand why Ten Hag was sacked, because it got to a bad point and the players weren't playing for him anymore. And at that point, maybe you do have to change managers. So I understand that. But when Ten Hag was sacked, I wasn't sat there thinking, oh, great, we're going to be winning the league next season. I thought, you know, we'll be lucky to finish in the top 10. And just to kind of go over that point, at the beginning of this season, when I did my match reaction, my season prediction, after we'd had a good summer, you know, we signed Lenny Yoro, Manuel Ugarte, De Ligt, Xerxes. Who else did we sign? Mazraoui. I thought the summer was decent. It was like a 6 or a 7 out of 10 summer, right? It was better than the summer before anyway. And I said at the beginning of the year, I think Man United could finish anywhere between 6th and 10th. And this was at the beginning of the season, before a ball had even been kicked. I said 6th to 10th is probably realistic. And I gave you my reasons for that. I said, all of the teams around us have strengthened. Brighton in the summer, I think they spent about 200 million in the last summer. Obviously, you know, we know where they've got their money from because they sold people like Caicedo, they sold McAllister. So I'm not sat here saying they spent more money than us. Like, that's not the narrative. Yeah, so in the summer, I'm just as an example here, Brighton spent 280 million euros in the summer, Brighton, and their net spend was 230 million euros in one window. So when you look at that, how can we sit here as a fan base and think that we're going to finish above Brighton? And I know, again, that's embarrassing, but I mean, Brighton are 9th at the moment and they spent 280 million euros in the summer. That just sums up how competitive the Premier League is now. It's kind of not about Manchester United anymore. It's about what's around us. And that's not an excuse. I know, obviously, as a fan base, we want us to be winning titles and we want us to be challenging. And I get all of that. And I understand that from a history's perspective, that's where we should be. I get that. But in reality, when you have teams like Aston Villa, Brighton, Newcastle, all now with the ability to spend lots of money, it makes it incredibly difficult. So, yeah, I'm just looking here, right? So Brighton's net spend in the summer was 230 million euros in one window. Our net spend in the summer was 140 million euros. If I told you 5 years ago that Brighton, Hove Albion, a team who were in the Championship, I think 6 or 7 years ago, were spending 100 million more than Manchester United in a window, you would have laughed. You would have said, is it April Fool's Day? Wouldn't you? 100 million more in more window. And I'm not saying by any means, I'm not complaining that we didn't spend enough. That's not the point I'm making. I'm just saying that all of the other teams around us now have the funds, they have the resources, they have the ability to spend big. They all have top managers, they have top scouting departments. And as a result of that, it makes it incredibly difficult, especially when you're already in a weak position, which we are, as we know. I mean, you even look at a team like Aston Villa. In the last 12 months, they've got Amadou Onana, Matson, Marlon, Jadon Philogene. They've got Axel Disasi, Ross Barkley, Rashford, Asensio. I mean, they've signed some unbelievable players in the last 12 months. So, yeah, it all depends on what your perspective is. It all depends on what you expect from Manchester United. Right. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Paul Pogba quickly, shall we? So the story coming out this morning is that apparently Paul Pogba has been offered to Manchester United, that his agent is trying to get him a move to Manchester United. And as it stands at the moment, the Manchester United board are undecided. There's some people who want him to come back and some people who don't want him to come back. My gut feeling says that he won't come back to Manchester United. And the reason I say that is because Ruben Amorim said something really interesting in his press conference on Friday. He said he was asked about whether they're going to enter the free agent market. And Ruben Amorim said, we have lots of young players. We're going to use the young players. So I think Ruben Amorim kind of answered the question, but there are still reports, as I said, suggesting that Paul Pogba has been offered to Manchester United. So that's one to keep an eye on. I don't think it will happen personally, but obviously this is a news show. So I bring you guys the news. We discuss it. You can let me know your thoughts. Should Manchester United go for Pogba? I say no, unless it's on like a pay-as-you-play contract where he doesn't get paid unless he plays effectively. Then maybe, but otherwise it's a no for me. But you can let me know your thoughts in the comments on that one. The next story we've got is on Marcus Rashford. Obviously, he just got 2 assists yesterday for Aston Villa. Fair play to him. And the story this morning is in relation to a swap deal. So this is coming out from a couple of different German journalists this morning that apparently Manchester United have approached Bayern Munich over a potential swap deal involving Bayern Munich midfielder Alexander Pavlovic in exchange for Marcus Rashford. It says United view Pavlovic as a key figure that they could build their squad around in the coming years. I don't know that much about this player, really. I know a little bit about him. I know that he's obviously a very talented player coming through the Bundesliga, 20 years of age. He can play as a CDM, which is obviously what we need, and obviously can play as a central midfielder as well. His market value at the moment is about 40 million. From what I've seen of him, which, as I said, is not a lot, I've seen a couple of games in the Champions League he played. He does look good. He looks like exactly the kind of profile we need. But do I believe any truth in this? Not really, to be honest. The guy was born in Munich. He's German. And he is a player. He's a young, talented player who was born in Germany. Sorry, born in Munich. I just don't see it. You know, it's like... He's kind of like the way I see it is he's kind of like the Kobbie Mainoo of Bayern Munich almost. He's been there since he's been there since 2011 and he's 20. So he's been there since he was 7 years of age. He's come through, you know, the under 17s, then the under 19s, then the second team. Like, I just don't see it happening. Why would they swap one of their prized youth academy players for Marcus Rashford? I don't see it. Maybe Manchester United want to do the deal. That's more what the story is saying, to be fair. It's saying that, Manchester United want to do this deal opposed to Bayern Munich. So it's one to keep an eye on. It's definitely a very good alternative to Ederson from Atalanta. And it's somebody who I think would fit in perfectly at Manchester United, obviously being a CDM, strong, tall, fast. But do I think it will happen? Probably not. Again, it's a news show. Bring you the news. Let's talk a little bit about this story about the Glazers then, shall we? I think that's the good place to end the show. We'll talk about this now. So this is coming out from Bloomberg. So this is a tier 1 business portal. And they are reporting this morning. So this is, as I said, from Bloomberg, saying that the Glazers have an option within the next 6 months to sell Manchester United and force Jim Ratcliffe to sell his share too. It goes on to say that Ratcliffe also has the option to make his own offer first, and he wants to increase his stake if that option becomes available. So I've been doing some digging into this, and as the story says, as part of the deal between Jim Ratcliffe and the Glazers, there is a time window in which the Glazers can decide to sell the club and force Jim Ratcliffe out of the club, which is mental. But as the story also says, if this does happen, Jim Ratcliffe would have first dibs, if you like, to be able to buy the Glazers shares. So the next 6 months are big, because if things continue to get worse and worse and worse, which we imagine they will, imagine we get no European football, protests are set to happen against Arsenal. If no European football means less sponsorship money, it might mean people boycotting games. Things are going to get worse for Manchester United over the next 6 months, 100%. And mainly off the pitch. I don't think things can get much worse on the pitch. We're talking about being relegated. Things can't get any worse. I say that. I feel like I'm going to say this and then in 6 months we'll be sat in a worse position. But literally the worst, to be worse than we are now would be to be relegated, wouldn't it? There isn't really much lower than we can go from here, realistically. So I don't think things are going to get worse on the pitch, to be honest. We might lose a few games, we might win a few games, but the real thing that's going to get them to potentially sell is the off-the-field stuff. So protests, fans boycotting the games, sponsorship deals being worth less money because they're not in European football, like things like that. Do I think they'll sell still? I would probably say no, but you never know. At least there is this kind of timeline here where for the next 6 months, the Glazers have the option to sell the club and force Jim Ratcliffe out. Once those 6 months pass, if Jim Ratcliffe didn't want to sell the club, they wouldn't be able to do anything. So it is quite a big 6 months, and I think this story has gone a little bit under the radar. I don't think it's anything to get excited about right now. And just to be very, very clear, right, this is on Bloomberg, so this isn't like a tabloid newspaper trying to create headlines. This is a financial institution putting this story out. It's not even a story. It's in the contract between the Glazers and Jim Ratcliffe. So it's not, it's not like a theory or an opinion. It is a story. If they want to sell the club, their only chance is to do it within the next 6 months. Otherwise, they can't force Jim Ratcliffe out. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. As I said, personally think they're just going to hang on until the very, very last end, but it's impossible to predict how the next 6 months are going to look off the pitch for Manchester United. We know that there's a lot of movement in this fan base to create change. There's a lot of movement to voice our unhappiness and our frustration. That's obviously going to be done through protests. There's one against Arsenal. I think is the Arsenal game next week? Let's have a little look. I think it's no, when is the Arsenal game? God, it's quite a way away. It's not till the 9th of March, that one. I guess it's the biggest game we have coming up, isn't it? 4:30 kickoff on a Sunday, Super Sunday. I guess protesting against Ipswich isn't really going to have that much of an impact. Protesting against Fulham in the FA Cup's not going to have much impact. So I understand why it's the Arsenal game, because it's a massive Premier League game against another big Premier League side. Whereas, no disrespect to Fulham and Ipswich, but I don't think the media are going to be that switched on if it's, Man United fans are protesting against Ipswich. They'll be like, oh, okay. So yeah, that's the one. Let's see what happens. 6 months. After that 6 months, Jim Ratcliffe is effectively here until he doesn't want to be here. Whereas the next 6 months, the Glazers can get rid of him. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to wrap the video up here. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please do make sure to drop a like before you leave. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Have a lovely Sunday, everyone, and I'll speak to you all